Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Westborough. If you have not seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. My day job is as an elder law attorney, actually here in Westborough at Myrick O'Connell. But this is not about my day job. It's about my friends Frank and Mary. If you've seen my many presentations or read the articles in the Westborough and the Council on Aging newsletter, you know that Frank and Mary's goal in life is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if that you identify with that, then this is the show for you. We do, among other things, we try to talk to you about people you need to know and ideas you need to think about, programs you need to know about if you're a senior. We've got a great guest today who is known to us by both of us, by both me and by my friend Shelby Marshall. Nobody knows me really. Everybody just knows me as the Frank and Mary guy. Everybody knows Shelby Marshall because she's been doing stuff in town now for a long time, right? And recently kind of retired from what it was a day job, also dealing with seniors, but has been now a selectman for 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
It's adding up. That's why that hair's looking grayer. So anyway, Shelby, whom do we have today?
Hi, Arthur. It's great to see you as always. And one of the things I think is the benefit of COVID is we've recognized that we don't always have to be in the studio, and sometimes it's just more convenient to not be there. And it allows us also to connect with guests who aren't necessarily right around the corner from us. So I'm very excited to have Rebecca Wild-Wesley on as our guest today. She is the owner of the Aging Space, and she is going to talk to us today about aging solo. And so we talk a lot about Frank and Mary, and Frank taking care of Mary and vice versa, and the kids and all of those dynamics. And but the reality of it is that many of our seniors are aging solo, either because they've their spouse has passed on, they don't have children, they were never married, 100 different elements that could play into this. And if you find yourself or you know of someone who is aging solo, this show will be really appropriate. So Rebecca, great to see you again.
It's really nice to be here with both of you.
So Rebecca, you've done these shows.
And by the way, just for the folks who were wondering, so is Shelby like on vacation? And that's why she's doing this. She is actually at her house in Westborough. She is at this moment in Westborough, still being a selectman, right? Yeah. You can call her right now.
Right. Yeah, I got my phone right here. I might not answer, right. But yeah. And so Rebecca, first of all, please, for our guests, introduce yourself further and kind of your line of work, and then we'll get into all the good stuff about solo.
Sure. It's really nice to be with both of you. And the nature of my job is that I often end up working with people who run home care companies and who are elder law attorneys. So this is a really nice trio. So as an aging life care manager, which is what I am, I've owned my business, The Aging Space, in the greater Milford area for 9 years, and actually have found that it's a really exciting opportunity to work with aging families. Often it's not just the elder, it's their children, it's their significant others, the people who they call family, and helping them to make decisions around what comes next. Often we are called when they're in the midst of a crisis or a change in their health or circumstance, and not unlikely that change in circumstance could be the death of a spouse or some kind of physical ailment that landed them in the emergency room, and they realize their life is now changed. Something has happened that's going to make the future less of a reliable feature in their life. So often their children will call. Many times, though, it is the elder themselves. And so we just help them with trying to make a decision about what comes next, which means take a look at where you're living. Is that your home? Is that where you raised your kids? Have you already moved somewhere else and you've done some downsizing, but you may need to modify it? Do you need to have some help at home? Do you have the right diagnosis? Are the problems you're having related to a change in your cognitive status or your physical capabilities? You can't climb the stairs anymore. So we help people to make those observations about their current situation and then help them make a plan. And the plan is really the most important part. And I think that's really, when we talk about people who are solo agers, it might be more incumbent upon them actually to have a plan. The rest of us might think because we have a partner or children nearby that they're going to cover everything. But truly, if we want to be dignified in our aging process, we would like to be able to be in charge of this as long as possible, and no more so than for the solo ager.
And by the way, if you're trying to make that plan and the kids live nearby, it behooves you to find out if your plan is the same as their plan.
Absolutely.
Because that is probably one of the, there are a couple of those issues. That's one, and the other is what's wonderful about talking to like you, Rebecca, because I know we've worked together on a lot of things, is that you may think that you know what the options are and therefore you can make a plan. You do not know what all the options are. That's the point. I mean, how often have you gotten old? Once. You've never done this before, right? Now you're doing this. Do you know all of the agencies that are involved in this stuff? Do you know all of the programs that you might be eligible for? Of course not. Why would you ever know this stuff, right? So you want somebody who is doing this all the time and therefore not only knows in theory what the programs are, but like who the people are, because there are a lot of these, how do you know what a good home care agency would be, for example? They all sound great,
That's right.
But who is the person on your side who maybe has experience with those players who can talk about that? I think it's just really important. Okay.
Great. No, it's a great point. So Rebecca, as we think about individuals that are aging solo, what's your approach? How do you even start that conversation with them, and maybe in the context of what do you commonly hear, and then how do you work with folks?
Sure. So I think it's also important to think about, how did you become solo? And some people have been on their own all their lives. They chose to not be in a relationship, or a relationship wasn't part of their life. And so they really perhaps don't have children, likely, especially with this generation. It's less likely that would be the case. They don't have nieces and nephews. So those are people who are kind of used to being on their own and maybe have a little bit more hardiness around that. They've had to do this for themselves before. But I think we also are looking at the people who just became divorced. Often now we have later life divorce, which is a bit of a change in how we are these days. And I think, with death. And obviously your person who comes into this status as a solo ager, let's think Frank or Mary are the one who has now been widowed. They have all their lives relied on their partner as a co-decision maker, and now that's gone. So I think there are lots of things that bring you to that point of being a solo ager. And some people may feel like they're a solo ager because their children live in California or in Europe, and they're just not accessible or available and not easily going to be. So I think that for those people, they have all the same problems everybody else has. They're going to age the same way. That's all going to be the same. I think, though, that what they're going to have to make a decision about is who makes decisions for me in the event that I can't be my own decision maker. I think that is going to be really huge for people to understand that. They're going to have to think about their future a lot more realistically. Because they won't have anybody who's, on both sides of them to be able to help them. So they're talking about the big issues. What do they want at the end of life? How long is the end of life? Who'll be there to make that decision if they can't speak for themselves? So I think for these people, before they put things into place in reality right this minute, they need to call Art Bergeron. They need to be able to have.
Now you all heard that. They need to call Art Bergeron, and the phone number will be at the end of the show with a little blinking thing, right? Okay, good.
So, and I think a lot of attorneys are asking these questions. I bet, Arthur, you see this all the time in your office, that people come in and they realize they don't have the supports. So who are you going to ask to be your healthcare proxy? Who is going to manage your finances if you're not able to do that? Many people can handle that until the very end of their lives, but you have to have a plan, whether, and you can't cross your fingers. This is really good. You have to be very intentional about that. So,
I'll just tell you what the story. Yesterday, I was talking to a lady from Hudson, and she said, "Well, I need to kind of deal with these things. I'm like 87, and my sister is really far away. She's like in Colorado, right?" And I said, "Well, actually, because of the electronics now, that can all work out okay. You give her your power of attorney, and she can handle it all electronically. You give her your healthcare proxy, she can get all the medical records and stuff." And she said, "Oh, but I don't like her." Oh, I said, "Well, now that's a different story, right? She's just going to pull the plug on me. I don't want her to pull." Well, okay. So, which goes to the heart of what you're saying, that you and it's hard, but you need to find somebody that you really trust, not necessarily that you love them the most, but that they're really going to do what you would want them to do. It's really hard.
act as though they are you.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest challenge, I think, for people to not say, I want my sister to live forever or to die tomorrow, but what is it my sister wants to have, to be able to make her life better. So these are difficult conversations. And I can recall even most recently, a daughter who loved her parents, who says, being an executor and not even her parents have been passed, she is activated as the healthcare proxy for both of them. She pays all their bills. She's selling their house. She's applying for benefits. She said, "This is the hardest job I have ever done in my life." And this is a woman who works in the court system. So that's got to be hard. So, when you ask a friend to do this for you, I think, for one thing, what we often encourage, and I know attorneys do also, have your friend be younger than you, not the same age. You need them to be younger. You need them to be able to outlive you. And if they are going to handle your estate on your behalf, they need to have years in their life, because this is a long time responsibility until everything's closed out. So, you're building your team, only your team doesn't include a husband or a wife or a niece or a nephew or a child. So your team really is going to end up having to be more formal caregivers or formal, you may need to appoint who will be your healthcare proxy or even a guardian in advance. You need to put in place who's going to pay your bills. That all has to come before you think you need it.
Can I just add one thing, which is regarding all those people that you're talking to? Even though they're your friends, or maybe relatives, tell them you're going to pay them. Tell them if they're going to be doing these tasks, I'm not just asking this as a favor, right? This is a big deal for me. I'm happy to pay you, and talk to them a little bit ahead of time about what, and maybe it's hourly, typically get something hourly. And if you trust them that much to talk to them about this stuff, then chances are you also trust them that they're not going to overbill you,
Right.
But at least they're not saying to themselves, "Oh my God, like your daughter in the court system, I got a million things, I'd love to help out, but I got a million things." So it just makes it easier, right, for them to think about that.
Right. I agree with you. I'm glad you said that, actually. Thanks.
So first question, just bridging off of Arthur, what you just said about offering, to kind of pay and having that conversation. I'm curious from a tax perspective. So is that, does one have to claim that income?
Theoretically?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So theoretically, yes,
Theoretically, yes. Right.
Okay. That's all
unless it was really just a gift that was made to you because you're so because someone is so appreciative of the work that you have done.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
In which case, since there's no gift tax, there's no gift tax to the amount that for the person who gives it. And because there would not be any income tax in that case, there would be no income tax.
Well, and I'm asking the question because, as Rebecca, I heard you certainly clearly say, and it makes sense to have someone younger, but if you're in your 80s and let's say you find someone in their 60s, right? That person in 60s could be on a fixed income and they're worried about, they want more income, but they're worried about the impact of that. So I think that that's also certainly an important part of the discussion for the person that's solo to say, how is this going to affect someone? Like, I found that person, I trust that person, but are they willing to do it? And even if I offer to pay them, is there a downside, if you will?
What is that going to do? Yeah.
Right.
And I would just mention, just to kind of going back to what I said, that the issue of employment, whether somebody is an employee, becomes more potentially fraught when the employee is doing the heavy lifting, literally, is picking somebody up, is moving somebody around. So there's this, oh, this was all just on a handshake, and you're just gonna, you're gonna make me a gift, except that I fell down now, and I hurt my back, but they're saying, did you do that while you were working? Was there workman's comp? There are these, but if what you're doing is just making these kinds of decisions and going to the bank and all that stuff, those kinds of issues just don't show up, right?
So I think the other, not wanting to toot the horn of care management, care managers are perfect partners for someone who's a solo ager, who can really help with what you were just talking about, is to identify, I think we're really good at difficult conversations, and these qualify as difficult and personal conversations. To be able to facilitate that, to be able to make sure everybody's fully informed. We don't write the paperwork. And often we are the ones who are called on by an attorney to write if there's a need for physical care, that we help with writing a care plan, so that we have a structure for the attorney or an accountant to be able to identify how to pay that individual, how to cover them with a workman's comp policy, to be able to put things in place to formalize that kind of care. And a care manager really works for that individual. And as they're most of the time, they're not the healthcare proxy, but if a healthcare proxy has been identified, the care manager can really support the healthcare proxy and ensure that the message that the individual, that solo ager, wanted to be conveyed is maintained, that we keep that message going, to be able to keep intact your wishes. So it's a great opportunity. And we have people who are aging on their own in our practice. Most of my colleagues do. It is going to happen more. We will see this more, and people really need to make that kind of a plan. And if you go back to that person who's newly widowed, they're also grieving. So now they have that burden of grief and loss, and perhaps now they've really not, I'm going to make some stereotypical comments. Let's say a woman has been left alone and her husband always paid the bills and made the decisions. Or reverse it, and Frank is left alone and Mary cooked. We see this all the time. So it's not just about what happens in the future. How do I make coffee? How do I make cereal? I don't know how to pay this bill. I just let my insurance lapse because my husband. So these people, they're in the midst of a crisis for their future and for today, as well as they've gone through loss. So there are a lot of unique challenges if they're doing this all on their own.
So Rebecca, when you and your colleagues work with solo agers, do you sort of have a packaged approach, if you will? Like, obviously there's conversation to understand kind of what needs to be done. You provide them with some tools and some checklists and some homework, for lack of a better way to say it, of who do you know, what do you need, what documents do you have in place? Like, how does that conversation even start? And certainly at the end of this, we'll make sure your contact information is available for folks to call and ask more questions.
Sure. So it's
right after my contact information, the little, right?
Totally.
All right.
Whatever, if they
alphabetical.
If they don't call
Bergeron,
right,
AB.
right. And if they don't call me for anything, I'm good with that. They're going to call me and say, how do you lower my taxes? Which is a different conversation.
So I think that generally speaking, everybody that we start working with, we work as we sit with them at the dining room table in the living room, and we go over what the conditions are, what the issues are. And usually that's a good hour-and-a-half conversation, which might include walking around the house or again, identifying if that person is really going through grief. It just it's a little bit more sensitive, and we pay attention to that time.
And
So
Rebecca, high level, you are bound by HIPAA, you're bound by confidentiality. So just,
Absolutely.
because you're,
All
although
those
we know you,
safeguards.
right?
All those
People are
safeguards.
like, who's this stranger I'm letting into my home? And how do I trust them? So, okay.
That's right.
And why am I showing her my checkbook exactly? Right.
Well, and before we even do that, they've signed a service agreement. We've talked to them about what it means for them to talk with us. We have talked about HIPAA and those kinds of compliance issues. And we've also ensured or informed them pretty fully that recommendations that we make for them don't serve us at all. It's really on behalf of that client. So we're not accepting a broker's fee. We have very clean advice. The advice we give is for the benefit of that individual. So we're not in there to sell anything. We're there to inform them and educate them. And depending upon their readiness to take on jobs for themselves, we might leave that meeting with a list for them of things to do, agencies to call. And again, I'm not just playing up to Attorney Bergeron. However, this is going to be to call your attorney, who probably has already been called, but because they're going to be helped putting things into order. It's possible that that individual really needs someone to walk alongside them on this journey. So for them, after they've met with us, if they feel like they need to have more support, then we engage in an ongoing plan of care management. And we determine how often with them, do they need to have visits? Do they need phone calls? Do they need help making some decisions about, is it time to move? Do they need some services to help them with downsizing or bill paying? And we just put those services into place with them all understanding their responsibility financially for purchasing services and making it budget friendly for them. Again, for each of these individuals, it's going to have a lot to do with their frailty. So let's translate that to how much younger they are versus really many people who will be solo for the first time, maybe in their 80s and on their own. So they may have more challenges with navigating. They can't do online searches, maybe, they'll need to have extra help. So we're there to give them a handhold, and it's going to be in their budget. It's got to be in their budget. If they can't afford this kind of work, we're going to help them find what it is they can afford to be able to have the assurance going forward.
And Rebecca, what is the typical, we know what Arthur's fees are, I'm just kidding. But Rebecca, what is the typically cost in New England, this market, to work with a life care
aging life care manager?
Manager, sorry.
Yeah, so generally speaking, it's reasonable to expect that someone would pay. We charge by the hour. Most of us charge when we travel and for mileage. So this is not something for the someone who's really struggling with their finances, right?
Sure. I mean, but are those,
with this in mind, we're looking at somewhere between $140 and $200 an hour.
Okay.
So
the
higher costs are going to be closer to Boston and closer to your big cities. And if you're in Arizona, the costs are going to be a lot lower. But because we're generally speaking about the Metro West area, that's the range of cost. And we help people to set up a budget, to understand it's not just us. If they need to have services, what do you have for income and assets, and where is it you need to spend it? And that will be in home care, that will be in their attorney's fees, that will be if they need a daily money manager. We'll help them to set that budget up.
Sure. And I think, before folks say, oh my goodness, I can't afford this and I'm not going to pay for someone to do this. No way. And I'll figure it out. But Arthur, you made a great point about the, aging. This is the first time people are aging. And as we age and we have different life experiences and our body starts to break down, as I like to say, the wheels start to become loose. It's the first time. So, I mean, I probably a poor analogy, but when kids were maybe applying to college, right? First time, right? The first one was the one of like, so you pull in all these resources of, you got the guidance counselor and maybe someone financially, whatever, you're pulling in all these resources. Okay, now you've done that. When it comes to child 3, right? You're like, okay, been there, done that.
Right.
but we haven't had that experience as we age. And so I would say to Frank and Mary and their friends that, you are the most important person here, and making this investment in yourself, to have these conversations with someone that can sort out what is an incredibly complex space in so many different facets, more than we have time for today, but we can certainly have Rebecca back, is a really, it's like going to an elder law attorney and getting those critical documents in place that so many people don't have. And then when they do that, they go, oh God, breath of fresh air. Now I know that certain things are taken care of. So anyway, that's my public
And if
service.
you think as a senior that you know how to figure this out, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. You have no idea what the options are, and you have no idea, even if you knew who all of the players are, who's better, who's worse, based on some kind of experience. So,
Right.
and to have somebody who is figuring all that out, who has no skin in the game, you're writing them a check, you're paying Rebecca Wild-Wesley so that she can you can totally trust her regarding all these suggestions. She has no skin in the game. It's really important. It's a great way. It's a great expense. It's a really important expense.
Yeah, and I might rephrase the no skin in the game. I think she has your skin in the game.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, it's not like she benefits from whatever your decision is, right? Go here, live there, do this, do that. So she is your sole advocate, and we're talking about solo agers here, but Rebecca, I know, having worked with you, that you play a critical role sometimes at the intersection of family members to where we started this conversation, may not share the interests of the person who is in the aging,
Right.
space, no pun intended.
Right.
But
Yeah.
so I think it's, we pay for a lot of kind of services in life, and let's not neglect ourselves when we get to this in a space that is so incredibly complex, has tax implications, has life implications. So I think it's critically important.
Now, I just have to throw in one thing, because I'm looking at the time, and at the end of our show, I always ask Shelby, as the selectman, voice of the town of Westborough.
Mhm.
So is there anything that you need to be telling folks now before we end the show?
So first of all, I want to thank you, Rebecca, for coming on. I'm so appreciative of this time. I really think my head is spinning with other topics, so we may call you back, and
Sure.
Arthur will pick up your fee. So
And next time we'll all wear green.
right.
We'll all-
But as it relates to the town, just a couple of quick updates. So a couple of weeks ago, the select board and the finance committee held a joint meeting. Our friends at Westborough TV covered it, so you can watch it. And the meeting was to discuss the allocation of ARPA funds that the town has received. If folks are interested in that was a hot topic at town meeting. Everyone kept saying, why are we voting on these things? Why can't we just, meaning why are we voting to potentially borrow? Can't we just, ARPA? So we've had those discussions. Both committee and board have voted on them. So I encourage you to watch that meeting, or certainly you can call me with any questions. The other update I will provide is folks are very interested in the 231 Turnpike, formerly known as the Regal Cinema property. So that has been, that is out for bid now. It's on this thing called BidNet, and our town manager gave an update at last night's board meeting that we have 30 registered bidders. Doesn't mean they're actually all going to, bid. Could be just people wanting to get information, but they're doing a site tour actually just for bidders this week, and a meeting. And so we'll be looking at opening the bids at the end of July, and very excited about that project.
Thank you very much. Rebecca, this was just great. It was just great. Shelby, this is a great idea to bring Rebecca back on. And she does, she raises so many issues that we might even have her on for another show, right?
Great.
I love that.
Right, Rebecca, thank you so much. Shelby, thank you so much. Folks, this is really important. This is really important. If you're a senior and you got to try to figure this stuff out, don't think for a second that you know what all your options are. You need to talk to somebody like Rebecca. Before you talk to your attorney, typically, you're going to talk to somebody like Rebecca, all right? Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you all on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Westborough. Thank you.